Max, before I start, you never really know how to prepare for these things and what's coming up in previous sessions.
Nous voulons vraiment que nous puissions nous préparer. Donc, je voudrais prendre quelques minutes. J'ai pris quelques minutes pour me préparer pour toutes les recherches qui sont dans la salle. Donc, j'espère vraiment recevoir le feedback venant de vous. Mais je voudrais vous parler de notre travail et qui nous emmène à ce projet.
I prefer a hand mic, yeah.
Je voudrais avoir le micro sans fil.
Okay, good.
D'accord, très bien.
Okay, sure. Right, so we're particularly interested in the upstream determinants and the upstream interventions that can change things at a structural and social level. There are a couple of reasons for that, and I think as you will hear from other researchers in the room later on, with programmatic interventions it's often difficult to scale things up, it's difficult to replicate things across different settings, and they're very resource intensive. So if we can find solutions which are passive, where something is in place and it's long-term and sustainable and it keeps on working, then that's really an ideal situation. And for this reason, we've been exploring a couple of these. The one is gun control in South Africa, where we've had some tremendous success in reducing homicide rates. And we're very engaged in alcohol policy work as well. So some of the research, which I'm not going to present today, has fed into a report in the study community for community safety, looking at the alcohol sales environment. This is the size of the report. You can just see it's quite a thick one, but basically describes a lot of the research. It's very descriptive of what we've been busy with at the moment. But the third one, which is very interesting and appealing for us, is looking at urban upgrading. And there's a very good example in Cape Town, South Africa, which I'll take you through some of the research that we're doing in a moment. Because something like urban upgrading possibly affects not just violence, but also well-being, mental health, how people feel about where they live, access to services, and welfare and support, and so on. So it's something that ties in with the Commission on Social Determinants of Health. It potentially has a range of effects, and in a place like South Africa, where during apartheid there was a deliberate attempt at under-resourcing certain communities, it's particularly appealing to see how if something like this can rectify the situation. We know that it should work, but one of the problems of doing upstream, evaluating these large-scale projects, the evidence often is rather muted and difficult to try and attach the effect to the intervention itself. So what I'm going to be presenting now is really our attempt to try and illuminate some of this, which has been a voyage of discovery with the SAKE project over the last 3.5 years. So this continues on from, I think, the last time I presented some of this work. And what we're going to be looking at specifically is our community surveys in Khayelitsha. Khayelitsha is a low-income community on the outskirts of Cape Town. It's about 40 kilometers from the urban center. It's developed organically around several villages or nodes. If you drive through, it looks quite developed, and that's because the spaces separating the informal areas are quite developed. And people visited Khayelitsha on a field trip last year, and were quite blown away at the level of development. But if you go beyond the development, it's very informal. So VPUU is situated in this type of area. I'll show you what's happened next. In the distance, if you are where the audience is, you're in an informal area and you're walking towards a station which you probably can't see up here. Okay, and this was identified by the community as a high violence area, lots of muggings, poor lighting, and so on. And what happened with funding from the German Development Bank, the City of Cape Town, is this very structured urban environment that was developed around this place, negotiated apparently with the community. I know my colleague Vanessa Borolski's done some qualitative work around how this could be improved or some of the shortcomings of this approach. But for us it was very important to ask, and I don't have a strong view on it because I think every program can be improved. The question is, has there actually been an effect? So what we did to look at where VPUU was, we used some geographic tools. So the whole area is Khayelitsha. The whole area is Khayelitsha. The grey shaded areas are informal areas. This yellow polygon, odd polygon and little dots is where VPUU has been active. And so what we looked at is people's proximity to the VPUU infrastructure. Okay, and we put a radius at 2 kilometers away as the furthest boundary of where there might be influence. We looked at some outcomes, and I'm presenting 3 here. So we've done a very sort of unadjusted crude analysis, and we're going to dig deeper in the years ahead to try and explain some of these things away. The first was looking at violence. So this is a set of questions from the community survey. They're not typically asked in community surveys, but we asked people about their experience at a household level and individually over the last 12 months. And what we did is categorize those responses into a binary outcome. So we had a measure of severe violence, which was your own exposure to 2 or more crime categories, or someone very close to you being exposed to very severe crimes, such as violence or rape. We looked at depression using an instrument called CESD-10, which is basically a set of questions about well-being, your mood, your attitude towards life over the last week. It sounds a bit vague, but it's actually quite well validated internationally. And internationally, they use a cutoff of 10 to indicate depression. In South Africa, the cutoff is 13, so it just shows we're a little bit gloomier than the rest of the world, perhaps. Or maybe there's some reason to justify why 13 is the cutoff, but it has been validated and shown to be reliable in South Africa. We looked at the satisfaction with infrastructure and service score, which we also calibrated to a binary measure. And we analyzed all of these simultaneously, but importantly we overlaid each of the households that we surveyed. So we have 1,200 geographic points in Khayelitsha, each of which, clustered around each of these, is 3 households, which we conducted these interviews in 2012, 2013, 14, and 15. And these have all been integrated so that we have measures for each geographic point. And then we separated it out into 3 categories. So beyond this 2 kilometer boundary, we considered people not to have been exposed to the VPUU intervention. Within this radius, this is a median of the remaining households. These are considered to have some exposure, and these quite a high level of exposure to the VPUU intervention. So that we categorized it quite into 3 groups. Not of equal size. By far, the most households are outside of the intervention area. And then just looking at the experience of violence by neighborhood within Khayelitsha, this is it's difficult to untangle some of this, just looking at it graphically as a map. But the red areas are areas of high violence. Blue areas are areas of low violence. You can see, for example, in informal areas, there tends to be high levels of violence, particularly on the peripheries here. Formal areas tend to have lower rates of violence. Difficult to try and see what the effect is according to the scale that we've used. And so this chart, I'd like to say, is self-explanatory, but of course it isn't. So I'll take a few moments to explain it. What it's essentially showing us, though, is that well, let me take you through it piece by piece. So, over the last year, about 17% of respondents experienced severe violence in the last year. So, these are the overall results at the top. These 3 bars. And then, if you remember, green being cold, yellow being warm, and red being hot, this is the access or the proximity to the VPUU intervention. What we can see is that if you have some exposure to the VPUU intervention, you have less experience of violence than people living further away from that intervention.
vraiment des grandes expériences de violence, vous n'êtes pas vraiment exposé à la violence. Mais quand vous êtes loin des interventions de VPU, c'est là où il y a vraiment cette grande... Vous êtes très, très exposé à la violence. Donc,
we also stratified by sex, so these are men and below that women. The first thing you'll notice is that men have a higher rate or higher exposure to severe violence than women do, which is obviously related to certain categories of violence, not others. It's still quite a surprising, quite a stark result. So these are those next two bars. You can see the effect holds for men and it holds for women too. Then we stratified by formal and informal areas, which are the bottom two bars, the bottom two sets of bars. So the formal areas on top, where people have a lower experience of violence than in informal areas, which is what you would expect. So the analysis confirms that these are important contributors to the rate of violence, but that this proximity effect to the intervention was consistent if you looked at people outside versus inside the area. I don't want to go through the results for depression or neighborhood satisfaction in the same level of detail, just to say that quite high levels of depression, 14% across Khayelitsha, but the same effects seem to hold true for both. Okay, 5 minutes left.
5 minutes qui restent? Ok, d'accord.
All right, so consistent results for depression. And similarly with dissatisfaction with services, I think it's important to note just the very high levels of dissatisfaction. So even though the results are significant and people living in close proximity to the intervention are less dissatisfied, the levels are very high. As expected, lower in formal areas than informal areas. But still, even in the formal areas in Khayelitsha, 66% of the people were not satisfied with the services being provided. How we calibrated that level of dissatisfaction, I suppose, is something we could interrogate further, but it's probably a true reflection. Okay. So, in summary, the findings at the moment support the hypothesis that residents living in proximity to the VPUU intervention experience a lower risk of violence. Just to note, we looked at violence a number of different ways. I've chosen to present severe violence here. We also looked at any violence. We did the selection of outcomes and exposures a priori. We didn't decide after the fact, but we've done some sensitivity analysis, and basically, these results hold however you decide to calibrate them. Sex and the level of formality are confirmed as risk factors, but they don't actually influence the overarching results of this analysis. The interesting thing was that there was no consistent dose-response effect for proximity, and for those of you that understand that concept, what we're saying is that if the intervention is effective, we'd expect that you live even closer, it would be even more effective. There's no evidence of that. Within that area, a 2 kilometer radius, there isn't a stark contrast between people living very close to VPUU.
A las personas que viven cerca de esa intervención y los que no. Tengo algunas teorías de por qué es así, pero es una cosa que vamos a explorar un poco más en análisis en el futuro.
Okay, so the proximity scores we've used, they ignore complex urban geography and how people move around the place. We've just looked at the distance from your house to the place. It's also a poor measure for social programs. So VPUU delivers a whole lot of social programs. It might be one of the reasons for this dose-response effect. It's an area-level offering of programs. So there might be diffusion of those effects into a wider area. Of course, there may be other factors that explain this away, and that's going to be the subject of further analyses. Here we've presented 3 outcomes, quite crudely in an unadjusted format. The next analysis will try and dig a little bit deeper for each of them, and we look at some other things we know to influence the relationship between that influence violent outcomes. The other really important piece is that this is just a cross-sectional design. Okay, so we're not considering temporality. It might always have looked like this. Okay, so VPU,
D'accord,
you
donc VPU,
sneakily just
donc,
chose a safe area to do their
choisit
intervention,
donc un
and
bon
hey
endroit,
presto,
l'endroit
they're the
sûr
results.
pour
I don't think that is the
faire
case,
son
but obviously
intervention.
we've
Je
got to
crois
look
pas
at
que c'est le cas parce
longitudinal
que nous
data to
allons
see
voir
if,
donc des données
if
longitudinales,
there's a temporal association
donc
between the
pour voir s'il y a
intervention
une
and
association
what seems
un
to be
lien
apparent
entre
here.
l'intervention et ce qui est apparent ici.
That's also going to
Donc
help us
ça
by
aussi
looking
va
at the
nous aider
effects of
donc à voir
displacement
donc
and
l'impact
diffusion.
donc
I'm not
des
going to go
personnes qui
into
sont
that, but
déplacées.
it's
Je ne
something
vais pas
that
aller dans
we've
les
earmarked
détails, mais
for
c'est
further
peut-être quelque chose
analysis
que nous allons
later
voir dans
on.
les analyses
I'm
ultérieures.
this is
Et
the last slide.
ça
If
c'est
I'm
la
out of
dernière
time, I can
diapo.
just
Si
stop
je n'ai
here,
pas
1
de
minute.
temps, donc je peux
I've
m'arrêter là.
presented the
Juste
results
une
of the
minute, je vais
community
présenter les
survey. There are
résultats
obviously
dans
other
l'enquête
things
de
that have
communauté.
happened
Il y a d'autres choses
during
qui
the
se sont
course of the
faites
study.
lors
Just
de cette
to note a
étude.
few of them, we did a
Juste pour
systematic
noter, donc nous
review
avons
of
fait une revue
interventions and found that
systématique
this
des
was
interventions.
a
Et nous avons
promising
trouvé que
type of
c'est
program, but the
vraiment un
evidence
genre de
wasn't robust.
programme vraiment qui est
One of the students did a case control study
Et
of
donc, il y a
trauma data,
aussi
which we've
donc
also collected,
des études
and
sur
found very
les
similar
données de
results.
traumatisme. Donc,
Instead of this distance measure, she used area-based measures, so she's revising that now, and we'll try and repeat this analysis using the same methods. I've mentioned the report and the alcohol results. There's been a tremendous policy impact of this research around alcohol, which is a subject of another discussion. And there's also some work that's very interesting. Students just completed a study that's now just about to be in the public domain, looking at the relationship between community participation, different types of community participation in mental health, which I think might be of interest to other people in the room.
Très intéressant pour les personnes dans la salle. Merci beaucoup.